Okay.
So hello and welcome, Remote Work Spain people. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we're looking forward to unpacking all the mysteries of Spain's upcoming changes to the autonomous invoicing system. We know that there are lots of questions about that. We've tried to share information in the group and deal with those questions as they come up. But I know that it's better to get questions answered centrally. What's concerning one person is probably on somebody else's mind as well. And we wanted to bring in some expert resource for you so that you can get a definitive presentation about everything that is known at the moment, because this is still in the future, and also to answer your questions and highlight any areas that we're going to be looking out for updating in the future. So it's great to also finally introduce you all to Nicolas. You've probably seen him around the group online on Facebook, but this is your first chance to meet him on video. So we're very grateful for Nicolas for joining us today to talk to Remote Work Europe and the Spain audience in particular. And Nicolas, would you like to introduce yourself and then introduce this fascinating subject for us all?
Sure, Maya. Thanks for your introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicolas. I believe you've seen me on Facebook commenting some of your stuff. And today I am introducing you a very interesting, really important matter that is coming into place during the next year. I believe most of you have heard about VeriFactu. To those who haven't heard about it, I will explain it to you. And I will also explain a little bit about the invoicing in Spain. So this is a new reform. The reform came into place in 2024, but it will come into place exactly in the practice during 2026. So I will also start to explain to you some dates that you will have to take into account depending on the way of business that you manage for you to understand when does it come into place precisely. So the first thing, if you know what is an invoice, it is basically a document, and this document establishes what if the type of transaction that was done, what type of service was provided. It contains personal information on the client and the provider, and it also includes how much it was for the service. According to the Royal Decree 1690 of 2012, which is the one that basically regulates the invoicing obligations, you have two ways to invoice people: in paper or electronic format. The most important thing about invoicing is that it guarantees the authenticity, the integrity, and the legibility of the party responsible for issuing it. So let's talk about the invoicing. Why is it important to talk about the invoicing already? Basically, this is the one that we integrate during the VeriFactu process, which I will explain later. So according to the same royal decree, the electronic invoicing has the same legal validity as a traditional paper invoice, according to the Article 10 of it. There are different types of electronic invoices though. Most common ones are B2B electronic invoice, business to business, B2C, business to consumer, and the invoice for public entities. This has a special regulation, which you can take a look at another law. I will send you the law later. And it basically contains an obligation in which you need to perform a special invoice for the public entities. Now, there is one question that you will have down the road when we are talking about VeriFactu, and it is, what language and what currency do I have to use in my invoices? Basically, Royal Decree 1619 in Article 12 also tells us two very important things. First one, the amounts appearing in an invoice can be in any currency. And the other one, it can be in any language. But what can happen? Either the tax agency eventually wants to do an auditory and you have the obligation to make a translation both on the currency and the language in case they ask you for the specific invoice. So, another difference here, regular invoices versus simplified invoices. This is a very important difference because sometimes people say, okay, I want to have a client, but I don't want to disclose this client's information. It is okay. In that case, you use a simplified invoice. The simplified invoice basically is for low value transactions in which you only have to present your personal information, the product you provided or the service in that case, and how much was it. But it is very important for you to understand that there is a maximum of 400 euros you can use on a simplified invoice, while the full invoice is a regular invoice. In a regular invoice, you have to disclose all the information on the transaction, both yours and your clients, in order for you to be doing a very complete invoice in that case. Now, let's start talking VeriFactu law. I use this specific signature of VeriFactu because this is actually what the tax agency uses. So it is important for you to start incorporating into your language. So this is regulated by Royal Decree 1007 of 2023. Basically, this regulation has like the objective for every transaction that is done in the market for the tax agency to be able to make already like an advanced more objective revision of every single transaction. That is why basically when you do a transaction in VeriFactu system, it will automatically reach the tax agency. And this will comply both with the integrity, preservation, accessibility, legibility, traceability, and intelligibility of it. And what is very important about VeriFactu law for you to understand, it is, even when this comes into place, this won't invalidate the past royal decree we were talking about. So the rules we have been talking, which is, for example, the one of the language and the currency, they won't be invalidated. They will be still applied in the practice. Now, I'm going to explain to you a concept, which is the whole concept in which you have to use VeriFactu. And the rule is, if you don't use one of these systems, you don't have to apply VeriFactu. I will explain this exception later down the road. What is a computerized billing system? A computerized billing system is one system that does the specific three following functions. It has to do the three functions. If it only does two, it doesn't consider a computerized billing system. First thing, it needs to capture information. So this system must allow the entry of invoicing data, whether through manual input, importing data from other systems, or automated receipt of data. Second, it needs to conserve the information. The system must start retaining the invoicing information after the invoice has been issued. Third thing, process the information to generate derived results. So this is the most important step. Basically, this invoice will be able to create both, for example, retentions on the RPF or charge your client the VAT, but it will also store all of this information in your database. If the billing system you are using already does this, then you have to apply the VeriFactu. So what are the goals of the VeriFactu system? I already spoke about two, but these are another ones. First thing, you prevent invoice fraud or manipulation. That is, for example, the aspect of the inalterability. Because sometimes people, what they can do, they provide an invoice and then they change the information. This won't allow you to do that because the invoice has already reached the tax agency when you have provided to your client. It will facilitate monitoring and support from the Spanish tax agency. It makes easier to track payments and deadlines, promotes digital transformation for businesses, and it simplifies tax filing. So that is basically what the new invoices will be looking at. So as you can see, it will contain all the same information, but there are two aspects that are very important in the new invoices. First thing, a QR code. This QR code should allow you, once you scan it, that it will direct directly to the transaction under the tax agency system. So whenever the tax agency wants to verify what was the transaction that was done, they should be able to just scan the QR code and it will directly show them all the information. So when an invoice business issues an invoice, their invoicing software must automatically generate and either store or transmit a summary of that invoice to the tax agency. So this will be called in the practice invoicing record. So this will also feature a digital fingerprint of the data, a hash, and a reference to previous records. And this will prevent omissions in the practice as well. Now, you have the question, who must comply with the VeriFactu system? I already said, whomever uses a computer billing system needs to use it. But there is also another rule you can apply here in order for you to determine if you have to apply it or not. There is something called the four no's rule. Why the four no's rule? Because if these four aspects that we will be talking about, you don't apply them, you don't have to apply VeriFactu. And if you apply them, you do. Okay? So according to the tax agency, this law applies to producers and marketers of computerized billing system and to any other business, professional, or freelancer established in Spanish territory. This includes Canary Islands, Ceuta, and Melilla. So, what are the conditions? You have to be under the four conditions, not only three or two, the four. First thing, you should not be subject, either mandatorily or voluntarily, to the immediate supply of information system. This basically refers when you are saving VAT information in the tax agency. Second, you should not have a tax domicile in the historical territories of the Basque Country or the Charter Community of Navarre. Third, you should not hold any valid exception resolution from complying with the Registro de Sistemas Informáticos de Facturación. There is one exception, actually there are two, but this is one specific exception the law brings into place where you can ask directly the tax agency for you not to apply the VeriFactu system. Some specific scenarios you can apply this under, for example, that you manage to show them that your business is not able to apply in this moment the VeriFactu system. They can consider for you to be exempt on this. There is a four rule, it is not showing here, but basically the other one is that you're not applying a computerized billing system. If you have these four aspects, you have to apply the VeriFactu system. If you don't, you don't. Now, here is where the important deadlines come into place. When you should comply with VeriFactu? Currently, the VeriFactu system is already moving into place. Since last year and during this whole year, mostly all the software developers have to have already the VeriFactu system because up till July 20th of this year, they have to be compliant of the programs. The programs should already be online and working. This doesn't mean that you should already be provided with the program, but you should already show the tax agency that you have the program complete. January 1st of 2026, this will be the date mandatory for companies. This means any legal entity who pays for the corporate tax. And July 1st of 2026, mandatory for all the other taxpayers. There are now two options to comply with the new law. There is something very curious here, and why is people calling this VeriFactu? Actually, the law never specifically tells that we are here about VeriFactu law, but a VeriFactu method. People tend to call this VeriFactu basically because there is one way for you to comply with this law, which is the VeriFactu method, and there is a non-VeriFactu method. The VeriFactu method is the one we have been talking about. Basically, whatever invoice you are going to create, it is provided automatically to the tax agency. And the non-VeriFactu method is the invoice will be created, but it will be saved in your computer and it won't be shared automatically with the tax agency. But it will have the same information, and whenever the tax agency again wants to make an auditory to you, they can come to you and tell you, hey, we want to see your invoices, and that they comply with the law. Now, there are also two options for you to issue these electronic invoices. Most of you might be thinking, should I purchase a software? The answer is no. Why? You have two options. First, you purchase an approved private software. Basically, a provider who already has a system that is compliant on VeriFactu, you can purchase this type of softwares, or you use the public platform the tax agency will be providing. It is very important for you to understand it will be a free and very basic option for you to meet the legal requirements of the new law. Approximately what we have on information is that this will come into place in fall of 2025. So it can happen anytime soon. Now, this is the other exception. We already talked about one. You ask directly the tax agency for it. The other one is if you don't use, for example, the computer billing system. So if you are using whatever other method, for example, paper or Word or Excel to exclusively enter the invoice data, but this method doesn't save any information, this is just for have your bookkeeping, you don't have to apply the VeriFactu system. Why is this? Because it is not considered a computerized invoicing system. Now, another important question. What happens if you don't apply the VeriFactu when you are obliged to? There will be two types of sanctions, economic sanctions and operation sanctions. Regarding economic sanctions, according to the tax agency official webpage, we have the following. For businesses, if you don't apply the VeriFactu law, 50,000 euros per fiscal year for using uncertified software or for modifying certified systems. And for software providers, it is much worse. Fines will be up to 150,000 euros per fiscal year for selling invoicing programs that don't meet the regulations, and a 10,000 euros fine additionally to the other one for each copy of license that they sold that is not certified. The operations actions. First, you have a legal inability to invoice. Basically, if you're an autonomous, you can do anything because you don't have the proof of where your income is coming from. After that deadline, you will not be able to issue any other legally valid invoices within a compliance system, except, of course, if you're not using a computerized billing system. Operational inefficiency. So you don't comply with VeriFactu, you won't even have the ability to invoice your clients, and you will also have an economic sanction. And you will be losing your trust. Every single business the next year will be already applying VeriFactu. Whatever business that doesn't, well, people will be a little sketchy about it. So this is another question. Basically, these are questions that we also had in our Facebook group. And one of those was, is this only applicable to operations or clients inside of Spain? The answer is it doesn't matter where your client is located. So there is a subjective scope about VeriFactu. Wherever your client is located, wherever the operation is, whatever amount the operations amount is, you have to apply the VeriFactu law. Because basically the whole thing about this is whatever single operation, transaction, and invoice that you provide to your clients should be registered in VeriFactu. Again, this is for transparency purposes. Now, let's make another difference. This is another question I am sure most of you have. And to whomever that hasn't heard sorry about B2B electronic invoicing, this is something that will also come into place during the following years. But what happens with the B2B electronic invoicing? First, we don't have any dates yet. And second, we should wait for those dates to see when it will come into place. VeriFactu, as we have explaining, basically focuses on the security of the invoicing. So it will be sure that you can tamper with the information. While the B2B electronic invoicing is not focused much on the invoicing software that you are using, but on the digitalization of the transaction. So what they want to apply here is a specific format, not only the method under which you use to invoice your clients. Now, do you have any questions until this moment?
We do have some questions coming through that I think are worth looking at this point.
Yes, please.
The question that's top of every freelancer's mind, I'm going to show on the screen now. Lots of us are invoicing in different currencies. So you mentioned that there's free software and there's also software you can pay for. How is it going to handle converting
Okay,
currencies?
so I will give you two answers, and as I was talking Maya at the beginning, we won't know until we start applying this. Everything we are talking about here is theory because we haven't had any practice application yet. There are two options here. First option, either you provide with your client an invoice that is in the money or the currency that the client needs to be provided, and what you do through the VeriFactu system is an invoice in euros. The other option, this will be the most likely, I believe, is that the platform automatically is able to make the conversion from GBP to euros. So we
Okay.
should wait and see what will be the practice application of it.
So will, just a follow up to that in my mind, given that part of the system is to timestamp that invoice as the digital record, will it apply the conversion rate at that moment, or is that something we don't know yet?
It should be able to do it because it should apply the conversion rate on the moment of the transaction.
Okay, so at that point it freezes your rate for your clients or whomever. Okay, that's good to know. We've got a few more questions through. This is one that I think every freelancer's had to deal with this one at some point. If you have a bad debt, what happens?
Okay, so I've seen this in the practice, for example, with the VAT. Most people with us, I did the transaction, but my supplier never paid to me. I believe the VAT will be charged to you either way because the transaction has already been into place. But what can happen here? For example, your provider doesn't pay you this month, but it pays you the next one. If you're fortunate, you can make like the cross counts between the VAT that you have spent and the cross counts between the VAT that your client is paying you late, but he is paying you already. So yeah, you could still be liable for tax even when you never earn the money. But if you're lucky, your client pays you in the moment for you before to make the presentation of the taxes for the VAT.
Okay. What about the actual renter, though, if that's income you don't receive?
Well,
Or income
basically,
tax.
you never receive that. If you are able to show that you never received the money, and this will also help you because basically the tax agency has already like the transaction operation, but they never understand if you indeed receive the income or not.
Yeah, because I mean, as a freelancer, I tend to invoice with a 2-week payment window. If it doesn't get paid within that time, then or maybe you have a bad debt and they never pay you at all. This has happened to every freelancer, so we need to make sure that that can be reversed.
Yeah, the key here is that you are able to show that you never get paid.
Okay, that's great. Now we've got another question about currencies, which is, I think this is more or less what we've asked for before. Actually, no, this is slightly different. This is somebody working for a company that gives them a template for invoicing. So would this be that you just have to recreate that invoice in a VeriFactu compliance system? How would that work?
You can do the two things. Either you reproduce the invoices that you are using currently, or you create your own invoices according to the new VeriFactu system.
So you might have to have a sort of duplicate invoice for Spain, invoice for your client system. Yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense.
And the most important thing is that it has the QR code and all the information the VeriFactu system will ask you to have.
Yeah, no, I'm wondering about that. What if you have income from a digital platform like Stripe or something else that do you have to manually create a VeriFactu compliant invoice for every, like my Amazon royalties? Do I have to create an invoice for each tiny bit of payment from Amazon?
Well, most of the transactions you do as an autonomo, it depends because basically what I have read about is even when you generate a simplified invoice or a full invoice, you still have to apply VeriFactu.
Okay, so there's going to have to be some way to automate this, hopefully
Yes,
going
we
forward, because
should
there
wait
must
and
be a
see what
lot of
happens.
people with tiny royalties or trickles of income or affiliate
Let's
income or something. So yeah, okay. What else have we got? Right. Oh, this is an interesting one. Client confidentiality.
Okay, if they have a client, it's block hours the invoice is sent to the AT. So as I explained before, you can still provide your clients, but with the simplified invoice or the full invoice. But if you are going to create a simplified invoice, which is up to the 400 euros, you can keep the information of your client as a secret.
Okay, so you can protect your client confidentiality. We've got a couple people asking about whether the presentation will be available. This will be available on our website at the sign up link. I will drop that into the comment thread directly so that you can bookmark that page. At the moment, it's behind a sign up link, so we could register people for this broadcast. But as soon as the broadcast is finished, I will go back into the settings and take off that paywall. So it's basically an on-demand video that you can come back to at any time. We just did the pre-registration so that we could take these questions live. We have a request to go back to a slide about using non-invoicing software.
This one?
Yeah, I think that's the one. So Becky, I hope that's helpful. This will be, you can grab a screenshot of this if you want, but wherever you're watching this, you will be able to catch the recording again. Once we're finished, it will be available for you on demand. So that should be accessible to you. Also, if you are watching this on social media, on the streams, you're also welcome to ask questions there, particularly if it's in our Facebook community, because Nicolas is in there every day answering your questions and giving you the support you need. Oh, that's answered your question, Becky. That's great to know. Here's an interesting one. How many languages does VeriFactu speak?
That is something that we should wait to see what comes into
Right.
practice. Because
Okay.
I believe most providers will allow you to create the invoices in different languages. I'm not sure about the tax agency's official system.
Yeah, so that might be something where you might find it's worth paying for third-party software, or there might be something included with your Gestor's provision.
Exactly.
We're looking forward to seeing what Entre Trámites are going to offer us. The free software, do we have a name for that yet, or is that something we've got to wait for the tax office to just finish up launching?
Yeah, because the information that we've been seeing in the different official sources is basically that the free software that will be provided at the tax agency, but we don't have a name yet. As I said, it can come anytime soon in fall of 2025. So let's wait and see if it comes in the following days.
We will see what they mean by that. Okay. It's Becky. We answered the question. When does this officially start? Diana, that is,
There we
yeah,
go.
there it is. That's the date slide. Excellent. So you don't have to worry yet, but you can start informing yourself about it going forward. Okay. And we've got another question about software, but I suspect that this is too early.
And I can't recommend you anything yet because,
Okay.
as I've been saying, until we don't know in the practice what is going to happen, how is it going to work, and every single provider starts using each software, and we can see and determine, hey, I use this software, it is better than this one, then we should wait and see.
And maybe the free one will be good.
Of course, it can
Who
happen.
knows? I mean, at least then it's already in the system. It's there. It's time stamped, and it's sort of maximum compliance. I use the free software in Estonia to invoice
For example.
for my Estonian business. You know, it goes straight into. It's a similar system that's stamped with a digital ID. So PDF invoices. So does this fall into the not using a computerized system?
It depends. If the computerized system you're using and how you create the PDF invoices, you should either or not. If the PDF invoices are created, for example, in a system where you have all the information, it collects all the information, and basically it reports all the information, you should. If, for example, you are using just a word processor and basically what you finally do is convert it into a PDF, you don't need to do it, according to the exception we were talking about.
Okay, that's great. And question from Lena. She did clarify that she meant Stripe rather than this being a value judgment on accounting software
Oh,
generally. And yeah, this is what I was asking, whether we'll be able to hook into marketplace
the thing about the
statements.
Stripe, it is basically this is a software billing system that exists in many countries in the world. So it can apply it for transactions in Spain, maybe, but I'm not sure, to be honest yet.
Yeah. I mean, I would expect that the reason they're launching this so early now with the compliance really over a year for freelancers then is that it will give a chance for all these platforms to hopefully get up to speed with this and do their best to integrate as they do in different countries like Shopify, Amazon, all of the affiliate platforms. They're all going to have to work with this, or we're going to have to spend time, I imagine, creating duplicate invoices or statements.
And as in everything, they would like to first test out this platform and the VeriFactu system to see what is working, what is not working, what can be fixed.
Yeah, okay. So we've got a clarifying question about invoices created in Word.
Yeah, because basically you are only using a system that is like collecting the information of every single transaction. You are just creating, I mean, you are going from the paper to a document, a Word PDF.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so at the moment, this feels like a potential workaround then, if somebody doesn't want to use a compliant way. You see, I invoice using Wave at the moment, which is a specialized software, but it's not VeriFactu compliant at the moment. So I could just switch to making my invoices in Word and avoid
Okay.
that system.
Although there is something I should tell you also. Currently, this is the information we have, but if the tax agency eventually wants to say, no, we want all of you to apply the free invoicing system we are providing in our webpage for you to comply with the VeriFactu, it can also happen. So even
Right.
this is an exception we are aware of, it can happen that the tax agency eventually changes the rules.
Okay. So for now, this looks like a loophole a bit that we could all just say, right, we're going to do our invoices in Word or Excel and just send them as attachments. So if a lot of people do that and they realize that the system's not giving them the transparency, because clearly we know this is about visibility
Of course.
into our invoicing, isn't it? That Tributaria want to see both sides of every transaction, match them all up and make sure revenue isn't slipping through the cracks untaxed. That is clearly where this is going. And I think that if these exemptions prove to be a big proportion of the freelancer market, then I wouldn't be surprised if they move to close that. We have a question about software that's already out there.
Okay.
Kipu, I don't know that one.
I'm not sure of people. You should ask directly your Historia.
Yeah, that's a question for them by the sound of things. And I know that Entre Trámites is going to be providing a compliance software. There might also be something possible through the digital kit if you apply for that grant, which I know that we could do a webinar on that at some point, actually, Nicolas. That might be something else that we need to think about, doing some content on the kit digital, because we've had some mixed feedback about that.
Just for you to have like an extra information in case you want it, we will provide you not only with a free consultation, but we can also talk to you about what is the software that we can provide to you in the future and how you can apply for a kit digital in case you want to do it.
Yeah, that's good to know. We had another question just checking on deadlines. So obviously this software's being rolled out anytime. Commercial software companies have to comply in January, but we don't have to worry until July as autónomos. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Yes, because yeah, it comes into play in the July 1st, but no, because you should start some months before to understand how for you to apply the VeriFactu system. Because I don't recommend that you arrive at July 1st when it is already the time for you to comply with it and you don't even have a model for an invoice yet. So start looking some months ago how you will comply with it.
That makes a lot of sense. And also just remember that as we approach that deadline at the end of June, your gestor is going to be dealing with your annual renter. You're going to be dealing with your IBI bills falling through the letterbox. There's going to be a lot going on. So this is not something to leave to the last minute. I strongly endorse, even if, I mean, my accountant at Entre Trámites is fantastic. I know she'll be chasing me to get on this, as she will with the tax return and everything else, nice and early. So, you know, if you need to be proactive with yours, then I definitely recommend don't leave this. I would even try and deal with this in quarter 1 if you can, if we have the knowledge available, because quarter 2 is always taken up with those annual returns and things start to get really busy and you're trying to chase down that one receipt from 14 months earlier or whatever, and we're all tearing our hair out. So don't leave it till that. We've definitely had a couple upvotes for the idea of doing further content on the Kit Digital, by the way. So we'll talk about that, and that's definitely worth us covering. I think, again, there's a lot of questions going over the same issue, but there's lots of these different edge cases. Does Harvest count as a computerized system? It's not one that I know about.
You should see if Harvest is collecting the information of the clients. If Harvest is collecting the single transaction information of each client, it should be already considered a computerized billing system. So
that might be one to go ask their support if they know about VeriFactu compliance.
That is why I was talking about Word specifically, because Word is as if you have a paper. You write a paper, you are not going to have any collection on information. No, you're just typing information, creating a PDF. Maybe these programs, they collect the information. So it is a bit different in the practice. Yes.
Yeah. So if you were using a program that may be connected to the VS database to check your client's VAT status, that would count as collecting information and being a computerized system,
It is still
for
collecting.
example. So a spreadsheet wouldn't, but anything that is integrated. So it could be that it's collecting information in a quite passive way through an API rather than actually you're entering client data into it directly. But if it's pulling from international databases, then it would likely count as a computerized record keeping system. So that, yeah, then that probably would apply. This is why we're doing this nice and early. So you've got time to talk to your gestors, talk to your software provider, to talk to your clients, and make sure that we have all this in place well ahead of July. Any more questions, please keep dropping them in the chat. This is extremely valuable, and I think that the ground we're covering is really useful for all of us. I had a couple of things that came up for me while I was watching, and also things that have been come in through questions and things that have come up in the group. You mentioned the sanctions that can apply for non-compliance, and you mentioned that the businesses can be fined. Does that apply to autónomos too?
Yeah, it also applies to autónomos.
Right. Okay. So theoretically, those are very stringent fines for individual sole traders. They're clearly trying to catch evasion with this. But we know, if we've been freelancing in Spain for a while, that people who are not evasive or criminal or anything else can often get caught up in sanctions just because their gestor's not on the ball, or because they haven't filed one thing, or because there was a typo in an email address or an IBAN. It's obviously going to be, we really don't want any examples in our community of this. We really want you to get across this and make sure that you're compliant and protected, and you do this all really in good time.
And
you mentioned, sorry, go ahead, Nicolas.
Yeah, unfortunately, if it is the guilty of the gestor, we can do anything, because basically this is our obligations as autónomos.
Yeah, this is what, I think a lot of people have realized that when their gestors make a mistake, they might be used to dealing with people in a different country who were part of a regular sort of professional organization and quality standard. which is another reason that I choose to work with Entre Trámites, who are accountants rather than gestores. And it simply makes a different level of professional standard going on in the record keeping, because if a gestor is more used to just filing one tax return or something, or dealing with property transactions, they might not have the specialist information to be across this. So this is why you need to start asking questions of your provider now. What else there was, right at the beginning, you talked about some businesses being exempt because of the nature of their business.
Okay, yes.
What might that apply to?
So there is one specific exception in which you can ask for it. This is not an automatic exception, but you need to ask for it. So this is one of the tax agency, and this is something we have seen, for example, with Beckham law. This is according to the interpretation of the tax agency. If they consider your business applies for it, they will grant it to you. If not, don't even ask about it. But basically, it is those businesses that are able to show that in the moment of the compliance of the VeriFactu system, they can do it. For example, there are some companies that still have a very old invoicing system, but they are still using it, and it is an invoicing system that is compliance. It's compliance not according to the VeriFactu system, but the non-VeriFactu system. They are still complying with the law. For example, if they manage to show, hey, we can apply VeriFactu system yet, our invoicing system is working like this, and this is something we won't change, they can ask for it, and even the tax agency can say, okay, that's good, you are complying with the law, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I'm wondering also different kinds of businesses, maybe if somebody's taking cash for payments of goods or services or at an event or something like that, how does cash work with VeriFactu?
That is also a loophole, because basically we are here talking about transactions that are going to be reported directly to the tax agency. But let's see, transactions 200 euros, 100 euros, even when in theory you should report that, we all know what happens.
Obviously the tax agency hates cash transactions anyway, of course. But this might be somewhere that you'll never be able to be totally compliant. I think we've pretty much covered all the questions that have come through. I mean, I think we have other questions in the chat which basically relate to things we know we don't know yet. And the fact that this is new information. We wanted to do this workshop early so that people can be prepared to start thinking about the questions that they need to ask. But it's become very apparent through this conversation that even somebody like Nicolas, who is up to date with everything that's out there, we still have gaps in our information because this is new.
I actually have some news for all of you. I am seeing in the official webpage of the tax agency, the free software is already available.
Wow, today?
Yesterday.
That is amazing. Okay.
So I will send you two links. First one, the official software. This came into place yesterday. Second one, this is the other one, an FAQ.
Okay, you put that in our private chat, Nicolas. So I'm just going to drop that into the comments.
Perfect.
That is from the CD, which is the information. And then where is this FAQ? They've got a FAQ. Excellent.
Yeah, it is.
And they've got it in English.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is very complete.
I'll just pick myself up off the floor. I'm amazed to see that in English. Sorry, this is taking a little while to share the link, but it's there. So I'm very impressed with that. They've actually released it. That must mean we timed this exactly right. There's something in the water, something in the airwaves today that you're meant to have this information. So I would suggest everybody read through the FAQ here, figure out what questions get answered. Hopefully between what you've heard today and what has now become publicly available, we'll answer a lot more questions. But I suspect that we're going to have to be revisiting this at some point as everything becomes clearer, as we work out the different costs involved. Then we can make recommendations as to what the best way to approach this, depending on whether you're doing one invoice a month or 100 it's probably going to be different answers. So I think that that's been really useful. Does anybody, but I'm going to wrap this up now because I feel like we've kind of left you with lots of homework and you've got all this reading to do. But I would just like to remind you all that Nicolas is now part of our community in the Remote Work Spain group on Facebook. So that is the place to come and bring your questions. We prefer to answer things transparently there because it stays in the chat, it's searchable then, and people can access that information. So if you've got questions after watching this video, after looking at the links, which should be on your comment thread now, then please do come back. I've put the link on the screen now for you to book into Nicolas's diary if you want to have a private conversation. He and his colleagues will do an initial discovery call with you free. So if you've got questions, because we know that whenever we're talking about tax or compliance and things, there are questions that people want to ask, but they don't want to ask them publicly, or you're worried that you might be doing something wrong or whatever. This is the time to get straight, to get everything about your tax situation regularized before this new layer of digital transparency goes into effect. So whatever it is that's at the back of your mind, or you're not quite sure if you're right on everything, then talk to this guy privately, not for broadcast across multiple software platforms. That I recommend that you book that time in, because this is the time to get it all right. Then I'm going to wrap this up because we've got all that information now out in the public domain for you. Thank you, everybody who has taken the time to join us today. Thank you, everybody watching this recording later. Don't forget to jump in with your questions. I'm going to drop the link to contact Nicolas into the comment thread as well, and leave that with you as we sign out. It only remains for me to thank Nicolas. Thank you to you for your time. I know that you're in Colombia and this is still horrible o'clock in the morning for you, so we particularly appreciate your being on the ball and sharing with us in Europe this morning. Thank you for all the support that you provide us in the Facebook community as well. And it's been really good having you with us today. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.